that we have Doug on the full screen. Yeah, on this year's AXPONA, as I told you, we feature on the beginning of the chain between the musician and you as an end user of those music files, and we like to honor the people and give you information about how they do it and what is especially important and how a recording can sound pretty different depending on what these experienced sound engineers are doing. Especially we like to focus on minimalistic recording, where Doug Fearn is a specialist on. He has very much experience on it, and you need experience, because if you have just one single mic or a group of very few mics, everything has to be set up properly, as you will hear from him, and you can't do that with lots of sessions of trial error probably. And I'm very happy that Doug is taking his time to prepare this session for you, and I'm very glad that he's gonna join us now. And Doug, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
All right, first of all, I'd like to thank Frank for setting this up and for the invitation to speak to you today. I would much prefer to have been there with you, which is always a better experience for both me and for the audience, I think. But it wasn't feasible with my schedule, but perhaps next year I'll be able to come back and do a presentation in person for you. But I'm going to start here with a little bit of history. The earliest music recordings were made by necessity with one microphone, or rather one acoustic horn. That approach continued well into the electrical recording era. They still just used one microphone. By the 1950s, more mics were used. Stereo, of course, required at least two microphones, and when multi-track tape machines were developed, it became practical to put each instrument or group of instruments onto an isolated recording track. In digital recording, the number of tracks is essentially unlimited. Eventually, engineers and producers had enough tracks that every mic could have its own track. Drums, for example, were recorded with a dozen or more individual microphones. With multiple mics, new problems arose because in many sessions there was significant spillover from one instrument into the other mics on other instruments. Often this created a signature sound of a studio and was embraced. But a problem arose because of the temporal and phase differences in the arrival time of various sounds into mics that might be far apart. Or the mics might be close together, like on a drum kit. The bleed of a sound into multiple microphones tended to smear the sound and reduce its impact. Engineers developed their own techniques to keep the sounds of each drum or cymbal from being picked up by other mics. But the isolation was never great, maybe 20 dB at best. Unwanted sounds as low as minus 60 dB or even lower influence our perception of the music to its detriment. The solution is to use the fewest mics possible, even one mic, on a drummer, for example, if the drummer can play in perfect balance. By the 1970s, many studios used separate isolation booths for instruments and vocalists in order to completely isolate them from other sounds in the room, and vice versa. The result was a total disconnection between the instruments. Players could not hear each other, so headphones were necessary, and they had minimum visual contact, which increased the sense of isolation. Sometimes entire records are done one instrument at a time, using a click track to keep everyone synchronized. With this temporal separation, isolation was total and complete. Some recording artists adapted well to this method, but I think they would all prefer to play together, all in one room, with natural, audible, and visual contact. They make better music that way. I began my recording career with a mono Ampex tape machine and a handful of mics. I soon upgraded my studio to 2, then 4, then 8, then 16, and then 24-track tape machines. But at the beginning, I had to find ways to record using a minimum number of mics. I later embraced the multi-track, multi-mic approach to recording because that's what my clients demanded. It did make my job a lot easier, but I always felt that I was losing something. I felt the same way when recording equipment went from vacuum tubes to solid state. Today, I have the luxury of only working on the projects that I am producing. I work with the artists I want to work with and record them the way I want to. That has steadily pushed me over the past 20 years to use fewer and fewer microphones on my sessions. I have done sessions with just one stereo mic or a pair of matched mics that were used to record everything at the same time. In this example I'm going to play, 2 separate recordings were made of the same performance, one using a single stereo microphone and the other recorded with traditional multiple microphones. The players were arranged in 2 groups on either side of a Blumline stereo mic. That's 2 mics with a bidirectional or figure-8 pattern oriented 90 degrees to each other. The proper balance is achieved by moving the players closer or farther from the microphone. The stereo image is established by their location. This was not a formal recording for an album, but an impromptu gathering of musicians to help me make a video illustrating the difference between the mic techniques. There's a video documenting this session on my YouTube channel. First is the conventional multi-mic recording.
Thank you, Doug. And those ones standing, we're gonna play those samples in the next room. If you feel free to take a seat there, and I'll play you the first track that Doug sent us, the first in the multi-mic conventional recording technique. And then we come back to you, Doug.
Okay.
Just enjoy your seats.
Yeah, yeah.
What if I had been a cowboy? All day long I'd ride the range, maybe catch some desperados, sitting waiting on a train. That could be my claim to fame.
And now, so we heard the first recording from Doug. Doug, what's on the second?
Okay, thanks, Frank. I can't hear the music, so you have to tell me when the...
Yeah, I can leave the microphone open if you want, then you, if it's not interfering. Okay.
Yeah, let's try that. Okay, so the recording you just heard was recorded to a digital recording system, 24 bits, 96 kilohertz sample rate, using an assortment of condenser and ribbon microphones. And this next one is exactly the same performance, but recorded with a single microphone.
Okay, we start the second one.
What if I had been a cowboy. All day long I'd ride the range, maybe catch some desperados, sitting waiting on a train. That could be my claim to fame.
Thank you.
Okay, this version of the recording uses a single AEA R88 stereo ribbon microphone, and it was recorded in DSD-128. Both versions have their strengths and weaknesses. The multi-mic version has a bit more focus, especially on the vocal, but to me, the single mic version conveys the intent of the artists and players better. It is as if they are in the same room with you. There is a feeling to the stereo that is more compelling to me. Interestingly, when this when this video was published, the overwhelming response by the listeners was that they preferred the single mic version. Recording with a single microphone is seldom possible in most music. First, it requires the players to all play in perfect balance from beginning to end. Everyone has to have the same sense of dynamics because there's no changing the balance or levels of individual instruments after the fact. And it requires players and instruments that are naturally compatible. It would not work well with a loud electric guitar playing along with acoustic instruments, for example. I have done that and made it work, but it involves too many compromises. The principles of the single mic technique can be used in an expanded form with the one single mic example. In this recording approach, my partners in Outer Marker Records used for their jazz trio albums. Joff and George Hazelrig have perfected their trio recording through years of experimentation. The instruments are piano, drums, and upright bass. We always record a piano with the lid removed and a single Bloomline stereo microphone about a foot above the sounding board. You can see it in this slide. In this configuration, the sound of the piano projects upward. In concert, classical pianists have the lid opened in such a way that it reflects the vertically oriented sound out to the audience by reflection from the lid. We prefer the direct sound above the piano, which eliminates the modification of the sound as it is reflected off the tilted lid. I should mention that this is not a typical way of recording. Most pianos are recorded in the studio with multiple microphones placed at various locations inside the piano, perhaps with the lid closed entirely, or with the microphones aimed at the half-opened lid. On the other hand, the drums and bass both project horizontally. For that pickup, another single stereo microphone is placed between the two instruments. The proper balance is achieved by mic placement. Here is an example from a recent album on Outer Marker Records by the Hazelrig Brothers Trio.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Frank. By the way, all our recordings for the past 8 years have been to DSD-256. All of the Outer Marker releases are available for download at Native DSD, in multiple DSD and WAV formats. And all our recordings are made with the mic preamps, equalizers, and compressors that I designed and are manufactured by D.W. Fearn. This song was mixed through an analog console back to DSD. By the way, in today's presentation, all the files have been converted to 24-bit, 96 kilohertz PCM. As an example of an application where the single mic technique is the logical choice, here is a sample of a recording I made of spring birds in May of 2020 during the COVID shutdown, when the world was mostly free of man-made noise.
Thank you. I've pre-listened to this recording and I just have to say it's stunning. Look at the three-dimensionality of the birds captured in Doug Fearn's recording. It's an almost therapeutic recording. And I think you told me it's number one of the recordings that you provide online.
Yeah, I mean, it's been in the native DSD top 10 purchases since it appeared just a few weeks ago. So that's very gratifying. I would not have expected that, but I'm very pleased. This recording was made with a single mic using the Bloomline configuration, which you might have guessed by now is my favorite stereo pickup technique. The microphone was a Neumann SM69 stereo condenser, and this was recorded in DSD 256. The full resolution DSD version is available on native DSD. My next example illustrates a composite approach to recording, using what I think are the best techniques for this genre. The artist is Corey Lane Green, a singer-songwriter in the Appalachian Americana tradition, but we are taking that a step beyond.
Okay, we're gonna hear that.
I say we strike the match, we've got nothing left to lose. Blow the whole thing up in smoke, there's nothing left to prove. Let the heartache knock you out, let it flutter up and true. All the checks and balances, all receipts and claims withdrew. Now we let it go, let it simmer in the stew. The soup looks very different, but it's made of me. Walls have all burned down and all the pictures too. We are free, even though I still love you. Should I string us together?
So, this was the Long Green track.
Now, this recording uses a single stereo microphone on the drums. That provides a cohesive sound without the phase differences inherent in multiple microphones on the drum kit. The acoustic guitar, banjo, violins, background vocals, and cello are each recorded with a stereo pair of matched microphones. The only mono tracks on this recording are the lead vocal and the electric guitar parts. We find that the DSD capture of the instruments and vocals is of significant benefit even after conversion to PCM files, even down to MP3 or other data-reduced audio format. There is something about the DSD capture that preserves the emotional impact of the music. The next example is another true single microphone recording using an AEA R88 stereo ribbon microphone. The group is called Ananda, and the instrumentation is violin, guitar, tablas, and singing bowls. The players are arranged around the microphone in a fairly tight configuration. Recordists must be careful when using the Bloomline stereo pickup technique because the front and back of the mic array has in-phase stereo, but the side pickup is out of phase, or more accurately, reverse polarity. This side pickup will mostly disappear in mono, and even in stereo, the localization of the side sounds will be indistinct.
Okay, we hear the sample of
The final example is what I would call an augmented single microphone technique. This piece is part of an album in the works with a talented artist who plays singing bowls. You saw her in the Ananda photo. In this selection, she also plays various percussion instruments.
Okay, we're gonna hear that. So we saw that one.
Okay, thank you. This recording I made using a variety of microphones because I wasn't sure exactly what we were going to use. And it's also going to be mixed in Dolby Atmos, so I wanted to give the mix engineer lots of variety of sounds to work from. So the recording you just heard uses a matched pair of C12 vacuum tube condenser microphones oriented in Bloomline. That's the primary pickup. In addition, a pair of AEA R44 ribbon microphones were spaced about 6 feet apart on either side of the C12s. The ribbon mics added more weight to the recording and counterbalanced the inherent brightness of the condenser mics. Both sets of mics are about 6 feet from the instruments. There's also a Neumann SM69 stereo mic above and in back of the instruments for use in the Atmos version of this album. Now I have to tell you, we just mixed that album yesterday, and after listening to it for quite a bit over 2 months, we concluded that the single set of AEA R44 ribbon mics was the primary sound we were going to use. So the C12 and the SM69 tracks will only be used in the Atmos mix. This type of recording is devilishly difficult to do well because of the very low sound level of the bowls. It requires an extremely quiet studio and state-of-the-art mic preamps that are quiet enough to not add any of their own noise. As in all the recordings I have played today, the microphones are the ones my company manufactures. Everything in the audio chain uses only vacuum tubes, with the exception of the Merging Technologies Converter's analog input stage. Single mic recording is usually not practical in most recording situations, but it does work extremely well for location recording of classical, choral, or chamber music. In fact, that is where I refine my minimalist recording techniques. The same approach can be applied in the studio, but it depends on the music, the players, and the acoustical quality of the actual studio space. When it is possible, the results can be stunning. These techniques can also be applied in a hybrid approach. As a producer and engineer, I use whatever method is optimum to make the best connection between the artist and the listener. Here's, oops, my slide.
There's also test mix. It's basically stuff recorded on a single stereo microphone.
Thank you, computer, for wanting to do an update in the middle of my presentation. Here are the resources that you might find useful. My YouTube channel has many videos illustrating recording techniques, including a couple of talks I gave on minimal miking and on DSD. My podcast goes into deeper detail on many of the things I talked about today. Thank you, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doug.